I think it's incredible. I mean, it shows that everyday Americans still have the power to organize and fight for their communities, and they can have more say in this country than the richest man in the world.
What do you say to those that criticize them pulling out, that the district now is going to lose 25,000 jobs that could have come there?
Well, one of those things is, A, we were subsidizing those jobs. So for the city was paying for those jobs. So frankly, if we were willing to give Amazon if we were willing to give away $3 billion for this deal, we could invest those $3 billion in our district ourselves if we wanted to. We could hire out more teachers. We can fix our subways. We can put a lot of people to work for that money if we wanted to.
Susan, what's your reaction?
Nope. She's just wrong. It's not like you have this pile of money that is going to Amazon. This isn't tax incentives. You cannot fund schools with money that does not exist. That's part of the budget process. She had in her agenda, she wanted to make it present, make something for herself. She didn't look at the district. She didn't speak to the member that represents the district. This is a stunt for herself. And the fact that she chose to make it about rich versus poor. Her conclusion is that workers beat the richest man on the earth. That's not a good argument. You want to have a conversation about tax incentives being good, and do corporations deserve it? That's one thing. But she went there because it's part of her shtick, and that's all she has. There is no substance behind it.
But I would say, what's interesting is the argument against the Amazon deal in Long Island City is a conservative argument, which is that you don't go company by company handing out tax breaks. You lower the tax burden in the state, and the politicians don't pick winners and losers, make it a more hospitable place to do business, and Amazon comes naturally and gets the $3 billion tax incentive from a reduction in overall tax rates. That's a conservative argument, not a liberal. The liberal argument is, give me that money so I can use it for something else. But as Susan said, there is no money. There's no, this is not like building a stadium. It's true that, cities and states build stadiums, pay for the stadium, and then hand it to a team. That's horrible corporate welfare, and everybody in the country is sort of learning of the egregiousness of that. This is something else. So there's going to be no business in Long Island City that creates 25,000 new jobs because Amazon's gone. Let's get more on this now with reporting on Amazon's decision. The co-founder of Axios, Mike Allen, and senior media reporter for NBC News and MSNBC, Dylan Byers. Guys, good morning. Good to see you both. Dylan, I'll start with you. And you spoke to Amazon's head of policy communications. What was behind the decision to walk away from this deal?
Sure. I talked to Jody Seth, who heads policy communications for Amazon. What she told me is, look, this wasn't based on one thing. There wasn't a straw that broke the camel's back. This was about a sustained opposition over the course of 3 months, efforts by Amazon to go into the community, to have conversations. What Jody told me is that oftentimes state and local officials wouldn't even come to the table to meet with them. And what she said, and she name-checked some of these officials, including Ocasio-Cortez, including some of the city council members. What she said is, look, we came in with a plan to try and bring 25,000 jobs into the area, to grow the economy. And what we heard day in and day out was never Amazon, never Amazon, never Amazon. And I think for them, there's just this sense, certainly for the leadership at Amazon, for Jeff Bezos himself, that's not the environment they want to be in. I mean, there was a vote on this that wasn't scheduled to happen until halfway through 2020. Amazon moves faster than that. And so at the end of the day, dealing with that opposition, dealing with that pushback is not what Amazon, is not what Jeff Bezos feels like they signed up for. And I also think this point that you guys were talking about, this question of financial illiteracy, not understanding how incentives work, but rather sort of using that as like a political talking point, not understanding what the people on the ground actually wanted. As Joe and Mika have brought up, the fact that 80% of Latinos wanted this, the fact that 70% of African Americans wanted this, the fact that Queens on the whole wanted Amazon there. There was just this sort of disconnect there that I think began to frustrate Bezos and the members of his leadership team, and ultimately they pulled the plug.
Well, I mean, Willie, if you're Amazon and you're bringing 25,000 new jobs, to a district, and you're going to improve the infrastructure, and you're going to improve the quality of life there. I mean, out of 50 states, how many do you think would beg Amazon to come? 49 maybe?
Well, they already are. I mean, when this news broke yesterday, just about every state threw their hand up, including, by the way, Newark across the river said, wait, remember us, we wanted this. We can just move you across the river and we'll be done with it.
Yeah.
Mike
Got a lot
Allen,
of space.
Mike Allen, what are you hearing about this? What's the reaction on Capitol Hill and the where you're covering?
Yeah, Willie, as someone who's been at ground zero of New York politics, explained to me the Bezos thinking. He said, I stood up to National Enquirer's blackmail. I'm not going to be pushed around by every politician in Queens. And if you're thinking what Jeff Bezos is thinking, he's saying, I made this deal with the governor and the mayor. I reasonably assumed they could deliver. They couldn't. They didn't. I'm out of here. And if you're the mayor and the governor, you really miscalculated. Mayor de Blasio clearly thought that he had enough hold over progressives to deliver. Governor Cuomo clearly thought that he had enough mastery of the state legislature to deliver. He didn't. And so it's taxpayers who now will not have these jobs or this income.
John, there were reasonable protests about this, questions about gentrification, questions about why Amazon wasn't putting more money to help with the MTA and to build the subway and all these things that would have won them a lot of goodwill here. But that's all part of a negotiation that will not happen now.
Correct. And I'll say, having lived in Fort Greene, Brooklyn at the time that the Barclays Center was getting built, there was a similar phenomenon that took place around the Barclays Center. There was your community. There's gentrification is in any mixed race city. There's complexity to gentrification. A lot of people like the housing values going up. Other people don't like the disruption. You have a fight, and then in many cases, as with Barclays, eventually it gets settled. The stadium's now, the arena's now a part of the fabric of Central Brooklyn. And although there are still people who are unhappy about it, by and large, most people are happy about it and the economic development that it brought. But it raises a question that I want to ask Dylan. To go back to something that Mike was just saying, which is that Jeff Bezos said he thought he had the deal. He got the deal done. He got the deal done with the mayor. He got the deal done with the governor. To me, it reads an awful lot like a degree of kind of naivete on the part of the Amazon CEO. In this case, they conducted a year-long, or more than a year-long, audition process around the country with cities making their bids for where this headquarters are going to go. One would have thought that a company that is as smart and large and enmeshed in various communities as Amazon.com is, that Bezos would have gone a little deeper on the political analysis here, or his team, that is, would have pressed on the question of whether de Blasio and whether Cuomo could deliver this or not, that you could have foreseen that this was not going to be the slam dunk that they thought it was. No one should have thought this was ever going to be simple. So I guess my question is whether they were totally blindsided by this, or whether they recognized there was going to be trouble, but they just thought they had enough political muscle to overcome it.
John, it's a fascinating question. I don't know if it's so much a naivete as it is perhaps arrogance. But either way, there's certainly a lack of foresight. You should know going into New York City what the politics on the ground are. You should know what you're dealing with. My sense, based off of the conversations I've had, is that they felt as though de Blasio and Governor Cuomo were going to carry that ball for them. I don't think Jeff Bezos and his team thought that they were going to have to be the ones that were coming to the table with state and local officials. Maybe they should have thought that. Maybe it was arrogant not to think that. But again, I think to go back to Mike's point, there is a sense here, for Bezos that he doesn't deal with extortion. And I think he might see the way that local officials are treating this decision the same way he sees the way that AMI came after him and tried to extort him and blackmail him over those pictures and those texts. I think for him, he thinks, look, I'm coming at you with a game-changing company and a game-changing investment in the local economy. If you don't want it, fine, I'll go elsewhere. Amazon is going to be just fine.
I'll just say just quickly, anybody who saw the Barclays experience, or prior to that, the Walmart, when the Walmart opened in Rego Park, Queens, these two big examples of giant developments that took place in communities that were mixed race, mixed economies, and where gentrification has been a long-term concern, both of those companies, Walmart and the Ratners, who were doing the Nets development, the Barclays, they had to negotiate. It was complicated. There are no slam dunks in New York local politics.
Agreed.
There aren't.
But in both of those cases, they had the city council speaker on board, and basically they dropped this bomb on the New York City speaker, who was newly elected, and said, "Here you go. You better accept it." And that was the play they weren't planning on.
All right, Dylan Byers and Mike Allen, thank you all
guys.
so much. Dylan, thanks for waking up early, as usual. John Podhoretz, thank you as well. I greatly appreciate you being here. You know, Mika, what's also lost here is just the reality in American capitalism. It is messy, it is difficult, but in this case, jobs create jobs. You can't just look at Amazon. It's the jobs that will be created out of that. You look at Washington, D.C., you look at the MCI Center when that went in, you look at what happened when the Nationals ballpark went in. It actually, the fabric of both of those neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. have changed, and most people would say will have changed for the better. And that's something that's not understood. It's just like the government shutdown. It wasn't just the 700,000 employees that were missing a paycheck. It was all the vendors. It was the cab drivers. It was the cafes. It was people on the restaurant. I mean, this could have helped not just the 25,000 people there, but so many other people in that area. And as Andrew Ross Sorkin said, there's just a basic ignorance of economics 101 here, and it's cost Queens 25,000 jobs.
And the many layers of the conversation are much more complicated, but the conversation we were having earlier about AOC is more about the politics when you deal with a situation like this. This is not a win-win-win, and she put it out that way. We have a lot more still ahead, including Bob Mueller. He has a new boss who has vowed to let him finish his investigation. But the question now is whether the new Attorney General will make the Mueller report public. We'll talk about that ahead on Morning Joe.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.